Zambia is currently host to a UNHRC rapporteur, Irene Khan. She comes in the country to evaluate the freedom of expression and the freedom of opinion in Zambia. But it's also at this time that a lot of political leaders want to speak and address some of the challenges that Zambia is experiencing from the economy, but also in respect of the citizens' rights. On this edition of This Day, I sat down with the president of the Citizens First political party. He made a statement recently in relation to the UNHRC and its position on Zambia that got him with a lot of criticism. But he also criticizes the Zambian government on how they've administered critical sectors that must run the economy. I asked him why he made this false claim that Zambia had been removed from the UNHRC, but also how Zambia can fix its present economic hardships. Welcome to This Day. My name is Dingindaba Jonah Buyoya. Mr. Kalaba, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of This Day. We're very delighted that you are here with us. First of all, let's start off by talking about your recent presser that you held, where you spoke on the increased cost of living and blamed government for this. The government has made several arguments, and they say that they inherited an already damaged economy from the Patriotic Front regime and is trying to fix it. You, in fact, are on record as having criticized the Patriotic Front government for how they managed this country. Why then are you keeping and heaping this blame on this UPND government?
Thank you for having me on your program, Jonah. Nobody's heaping blame on the UPND. I think the UPND has put this blame on themselves. Before they came into government, the UPND government had said that they were going to reduce the price of millennium. They were going to give farmers enough fertilizer for their farming inputs. They told us that the price of fuel was going to come down. They also told us that the dollar would tumble in front of the kwacha as soon as they took office. These and the many other promises that they gave us have not come to fruition. So when we remind them, it is not to blame them. We are just reminding them that these are the things that you said. Why can't you honor your words? Why do you say things that you never meant? So it's not blaming them or anything. It's just reminding them to be truthful, at least for once.
I appreciate your argument, but I'd also like to find out from you as a leader and on your assessment of what's happening in the country, if you believe and agree that it is possible for dynamics to change and in turn adjust the outcome of what you could have planned.
Look, I think a reminder is a kind gesture to anybody who has goodwill. And we know that if they are serious with the governance issues as they claim to be serious, there is no way 60 years after our independence, Zambians can be queuing up for cheap mealie meal, which is costing at about 340 kwacha. If they were serious with ensuring that Zambians should have the best shot at their leadership, they should have allowed Zambians to be to be front-loaded as compared to what we are seeing now. Look, Jonah, I've always been giving this example. Today, you have all these border areas around Zambia. You have Chanida, you have Kasumbalesa, you have... All these have been given to foreigners. So if there was a deliberate policy to empower Zambians, so that Zambians can have a go at their own warfare, these deliberate policies they have put in place to exclude Zambians would never have been there. But because they don't care about Zambians, they don't care about how we are going to negotiate our way in life, they have preferred to give tax incentives to those coming from outside, especially the big conglomerates in the mining sector, and nothing for the ordinary marketeer, nothing for the ordinary man selling plastics on the roads of Cairo Road. That is where the challenge is. They don't want to help local Zambians, and their policies are anti-Zambians. That is all we are saying.
While you say all these things, I mean, let me drive you towards one aspect when we talk about the economy, the mining sector, for example. The UPND government projects that we exceeded 770,000 metric tons in 2024 in terms of copper production, and this is more than the 698,000 of 2023. Wouldn't you count this as testament to the fact that this UPND administration is actualizing their plan towards improving production in the mining sector?
Look, Jonah, if I were you, I would be very slow to even begin talking about the figures the Minister of Finance is talking about. How many things have this government, has this government said that have never come to fruition? How many things? And for me to begin speculating because he has given this projection, which is totally academic, don't even know where he's basing it on, and I should begin elogizing them, celebrating them for something that has not yet happened, is not in my space. Let them do the work first. Let's see those tonnages increasing. Let's see Zambians participating in the mining sector. This is what they told us. I mean, I can give you so many examples of what they told us concerning Mopani, concerning Konkola copper mines, but look at what has really come to happen. Nothing much has materialized. So when the Minister of Finance is talking whatever he's talking, if I were you, given the background that I've had with these leaders, I would take a chill pill and wait until it happens. Then I would say, let's move in that direction.
You say that this UPND government cannot be trusted based on what they say. But government also argues that you, as the opposition, are spreading misinformation and disinformation with specific reference to you because of inaccurate information, wrong information that you were spreading, and issued a statement claiming that Zambia had been removed from the United Nations Human Rights Council, something that is not true. You want government to be credible and honest, but are you?
Yes, I will be trusted because, first of all, we should look at the genesis of my article. I wrote it based on what was written in a respectable tabloid. Yes, my colleagues and I have agreed that going in future, these facts that newspapers are putting up should always be fact-checked. And when I came across evidence that we commented on a story that was not accurately proper, we immediately brought down that article that we had put up. That is what people of integrity do. That is what men and women of honor will always do. They will take responsibility when they realize that what they thought was right is not right. They will take the humility, the path of just bring down the article and make progress. But our colleagues don't have that humility. They told us that we're going to have a new investor, Konkola Copper Mines. They told us that the reason why they were reducing the mineral tax from 6% to 3% was because they wanted to attract more investments. They told us that by allowing Vendetta take over or begin managing the issues of Mopani copper mines, Konkola copper mines, we were going to have new investors come in the country and we're going to have a new breath of life injected into Konkola copper mines, KCM. That has not happened. The president held a press conference, Jonah, where he said those vendetta going back to take over Konkola copper mines is not going to happen. Why do you Zambians like rumors? That thing has come to fruition. It has happened. And nobody has held the president accountable for telling the nation lies in that fashion. Now, these are the issues. You cannot allow a head of state or a government that is supposed to be caring for its citizens to be careless with facts. Totally different from my case. Because for some of us, when we realize there's a mistake made, we take the humility path of saying this was not accurate and it is not in my interests to keep this standing on my page because we will misinform the people. How many things have we been misinformed by this government and have gotten away with? Look at the issue of agriculture, the way they handled fertilizer. They told us that they were going to, the way they handled seed and maize, with FRI. They told us we had enough maize in the shades of FRI. They began importing maize from Uganda. They began importing maize from Kenya, importing maize from Tanzania, and God knows wherever they were importing maize from. Why would a responsible government, why would a government that is truthful to its citizens not tell them that we have sold the maize which our predecessors are left, and we wanted to do business as usual? Now we have found out that we made a mistake in selling this produce. We want to make amends. They have not done that. What they did was to arrogantly continue claiming that they were on the right path, and yet they were not. The vice president gave a statement that was contrary to what the minister of agriculture made. And nobody's talking about all these things. But when you see how they came on Harry Kalaba for just commenting on an article that the Daily Nation newspaper had published in the newspapers, it's as if I was the originator of that article. And yet it was done by a reputable newspaper in our country. But they didn't even talk about Daily Nation. They insisted on my commenting on that story. Totally different from them, who begin issues of maize they sell. When they sell, they don't even have the humility to accept and acknowledge that they made a mistake. Any government, even in the history of our country, Jonah, people have leaders that loved the people, had the audacity to stand up and say, I am wrong. I thought this is how it was going to be, but it was not to be. We don't see that from the UPND corridors. They are the angels that we have. It can't be like that. I think they should have the humility to say sorry when they drive this economy in areas it should never be driven into. Look at where we are today. Today, it is 28 kwacha to $1. Look at the cost of living today. Look at the price of fuel. Look at the youths that they promised jobs that they would get employed. All those things are not happening. And when we say these things, they say we are politicking. Where is the politicking here?
And I agree with you, and I'll justify why I agree with you. I agree with you that when somebody does something wrong, when government or leaders get something wrong, they must come back to the people and apologize and chart the way forward. But you never apologized. All you did was delete a post, but you never apologized for the error that you made. What makes you any different in terms of you admitting accountability in this case?
But John, I was just explaining, I didn't author that article. The ones who should have made the apologies were the Daily Nation. If you air something as damn on TV, right now as you're interviewing me, you carry a story and then I comment on it, who should apologize? The ones that authored the story or the one that commented as a result of being misled by that story? I think the authors of the story must be the ones to deal with that, but nobody is talking about the authors. Or because we want to play politics in our country, even when we realize that he's not the one at fault, but because we are interested in politics rather than truth, this is where we end at.
I have to say here that we have held our colleagues accountable. And I just have to state that from the onset. But it also makes me wonder, because you were Foreign Affairs Minister, and I'm curious to know that whether or not you, as a former Foreign Affairs Minister, do not even know what it takes for a country to join or leave the United Nations Human Rights Council. Do you not know, as a former Foreign Affairs Minister, how a country joins or leaves the UNHRC?
Look, I'm saying that the authors of that story are the ones we should be talking about. When I saw that story myself, I was also, because the UPND government, they have done things in the diplomatic circles that we have never experienced before. So you always think they've reintroduced things that have not been there. But when we checked, we realized, oh, I think this was not supposed to have been. And we quickly brought down the article.
Over the last year, Zambia has been experiencing the worst energy crisis in our history, one that has impacted economic performance quite adversely and negatively, both for businesses and individuals alike. How do you believe that this situation can be dealt with differently, with prospects changing now under this administration of the UPND saying they're making progress, but also with the current trajectory projection of rainfall to improve hydropower generation?
Is it the situation of fuel or electricity as a whole?
Let us start with electricity.
I think we have always said as Citizens First that there are two dimensions to this challenge. There's the short-term dimension and there's the long-term dimension. In the short-term dimension, we have said, why is Zambia still exporting electricity to South Africa? Why is Zambia still exporting electricity to Namibia? Why is Zambia still exporting electricity to the DRC Congo? Why are we still exporting electricity to Malawi, and so on and so forth? We in the Citizens First have said, if there was a way of curtailing export of electricity for now, until the situation normalizes, that is what should have happened. If I were the president, I would have flown into Namibia and told them, I am sorry, you have been getting 70 megawatts of power from our country. Yes, we already signed, but our country is becoming unproductive. Because how can people be productive when power only comes when they are sleeping? And your colleagues whom you are giving power are using your power during the productive hours. And then when it is time to sleep, then they give you back your power and you use it from 23 to 05. During the course of the day, nothing is happening. Many businesses in Zambia today, as you and I are speaking, have suffered huge losses. Some have even closed as a result of not having a proactive leadership from this current government. What is so difficult about them stopping the exportation of electricity to these countries I've mentioned? That is why there is what they call a force majeure closure. There is that segment in a contract which will allow government to invoke that clause in case of a disaster like Zambia has been claiming to be having a disaster. They will say, we didn't anticipate to have erratic rains. Because of that, we don't have enough generational capacity at our hydropower stations, and we would want to curtail this process even for the next 5 months. There is nothing wrong with that. But this government does not want that. They have continued to export power because they think it is more important to have development take place in countries where they're exporting that power than their own countries. I would not allow that. So for the short-term measure, we should have stopped exporting power to those countries who are exporting power. For the long-term measure, we have said in the Citizens First that what is required is to begin exploring other possibilities of power. We have enough sunshine. Yes, solar could be an answer. But for now, what should happen in the short term, by the way, is to allow those people who are selling solar panels and solar equipment, inverters, give them incentives so that they don't sell the solar panels and inverters at the price that they're selling them at. Let them be affordable. So government should they should allow themselves to begin subsidizing solar energy, but also give incentives to those that are bringing in solar equipment so that many Zambians during this crisis can benefit from solar energy. But it's not happening. It has been business as usual. In the long term, as I've said, we need to begin looking at beginning to create hydropower stations, Jonah, not in the southern region, because now, as the experts have told us, there aren't enough rains in the southern region. Rains have remained now in the northern region. So let's begin thinking of building hydropower stations in the northern region where the rainfall has continued happening. We can also say, why can't we begin investing much more in biomass? We should begin exploring ways of investing much more in issues of biomass. We should also begin investing much more in allowing small companies that can begin selling hydropower or generating hydropower to ZESCO. In that way, you will allow small companies, because I think it's only in the energy sector where you don't have these small companies that can begin selling 1 megawatt, 2 megawatts, 3 megawatts to ZESCO. Once you open up that energy mix, it's going to help government to begin raising more energy supply for our people as opposed to just depending on one source coming from ZESCO. So it's a question of opening it up and being proactive, which we are not being.
The Zambia Development Agency says there's been significant investment into the country. In 2024, we saw a spike in investment in the energy sector, which was one of the largest contributors to the projection and income of investment in 2024. This clearly indicates that this administration is doing something about the energy sector, or would you say that it's all but a facade?
Look, I don't have a problem with those initiatives, but I think we want practical initiatives that are going to answer the now, the immediate. Zambia is in darkness. Power goes at 05 and comes back at 23 hours. That is the problem that we have. So, in my view, what should happen is that we should begin looking at ways that are going to ameliorate the deficits of electricity in our country or the energy sector. I appreciate what the ZDA is doing, but we want that to be translated into people having energy. We want that to be translated into people having electricity. If that is not happening, it will be considered as talk and not walking the talk. We are in a period where when companies speak, we want it to translate into practical action, not just talking the talk.
Well, under the petroleum subsector, you said that the government has attributed the fuel shortages at some oil marketing companies is due to the unrest that is in Mozambique. But are you not aware that as of January the 10th, but also last year, the Energy Regulation Board highlighted that the shortage at some oil marketing companies, at some filling stations, is due to logistical challenges. There's 2,500 trucks that are off the market because of a transit levy that was introduced in Zimbabwe that makes it impossible for us to have these trucks. Isn't this the truth, though? And why have you taken the route of misleading the public?
Look, I'll tell you that I appreciate whatever you're saying, John, but I'll tell you that we have speaking time without number on this issue as citizens first. We have advised government that the problem with this government is that they focus on where their monies are going to come from, as opposed to where the citizens are going to benefit from. We told them about Indeni. And John, even in the last interview I had with you, I did talk about the issues of Indeni. What has been difficult with buying the hydrocarbon cracker in order for us to begin storing our fuel? That has not happened. We have failed to recapitalize Indeni. And we have gone back to the same methods which the president condemned when he was in the opposition. You can say whatever you want to say about these trucks being taken off the market, but the truth of the matter is that the energy space has been constricted. It has not been opened up enough to allow other players to participate in the market. These same issues of single sourcing, which the government has been insisting on, has not been working to the OMCs. Many of them that I've interacted with have complained that the biggest challenge that we have is that the UPND government is not being sincere in the manner it is managing the matters of petroleum. And that the moment they begin getting sincere and allowing varied players to begin taking part in the distribution chain, the better for the country. But if they continue fishing for reasons as to why the situation is as it is, we are going to continue being in such a crisis. And there is no reason why we should be in such a crisis in the 21st century. I think we can do better. This is not the first government that has run Zambia. We have seen how other governments were proactive when it came to petroleum. But this is deliberate because they've got interests left all over their faces. And that's where the problem lies.
I listened to you carefully, and you say that government must open the market when it comes to petroleum products. But government, through policy on what they've decided, argues that the petroleum subsector now is in the hands of the private sector. They have no involvement in it. And I'd like to know how you reconcile these two different positions, your position and the policy position taken by government.
What I'm telling you, Jonah, is that why is it difficult for the government to do what we have been proposing to them? Why are they opening themselves up to saying this thing is just up to the private sector. Even when it's the private sector doing it. Issues of petroleum are so key because it is at the epicenter of any country's economic trajectory. The ones that are doing petroleum in the country are being single sourced by government, even though it's a private market, as you want to put it. Nobody can bring fuel in our country without the Ministry of Energy taking an active role in it, which is a government wing. So when you say it's being done by government and you want to exonerate government out of the energy sector, then I don't know where we are going. We need to accept and admit that the long term to all these things, the only way we'll deal with this thing is allowing as many players to access the Tazama pipeline so that these challenges that our oil marketing companies have been having can be ameliorated. But for as long as the process will be constricted, for as long as we will have few people dealing in the oil petroleum, the chosen few will have a problem. And for as long as the UPND government will remain adamant, thinking that they know it all and that they don't want even to invest in the recapitalization of Indian, which was creating jobs for our people, we'll have a problem with that. Because the job of government anywhere in the world is to create an enabling environment, an environment where all players are going to participate. It is not their business to choose whose environment must be enabling while constricting the other person's environment. And then they cry loud. It's the private sector participation. Have you made the playing field level? Have you leveled it? If you have not, don't waste our time. Begin doing what is right. Allow all players on the market, and then open up, capitalize in Demi, and stop this business of always telling us that you have increased the fuel, you have decreased fuel. Why should it be like that, as if Zambia has never known how to handle itself 60 years after independence?
I'd like to get a better picture of what you're trying to put across. And this is by you highlighting which players exactly you're talking about, which players are being closed up.
Look, I think it is not in my plan right now to begin talking about which players, because at least I'm accused of trying to promote other players. All I am saying is that government itself knows that there are several players. You have got the OMC CEO, the OMC chairperson. Call him and interview him on these things. He's going to tell you the exact players who are being excluded. He will tell you how many people are not participating as a result of the government's uh, handling of these matters. I have not spoken to him, but I guess what I'm speaking to, he can also speak to, because it is a stark fact. And people want to play politics around it. They want to uh, show that they are doing the right thing, when in fact not. We are going to continue speaking about this matter. Open up the market if you want the private sector to be in charge of the process. Stop constricting it and stop allowing only few players to manage the sector. Open the sector up and allow fuel to come in the country as much as it should. It is not the business of government to choose who should be bringing in fuel in this country. It is the business of the private sector to handle themselves.
In the interest of fairness, I don't think that you're being fair by making statements on this program that you do not want to justify. And when we ask you to give practical examples, you say that it is not your job. I don't think that that is fair. I think that you have to justify the issues that you're saying, the picture that you're painting, for us to be able to understand which players you keep highlighting. But also, I spoke with the oil marketing companies and their president, and with regards to the present shortage of petroleum products on the market, and they are citing Zimbabwe and not the issues that you are talking about.
Well, I think, John, I would not even want to belabor on that point, because I've already told you the position that I've given. And the position which I've given you myself is that they should stop talking about the Mozambican issue as being the reason. The major reason is that they have got players that they prefer, and those are the players that they are favoring to continue using the Tazama pipeline. Government should not be behaving like that. They should be not having a monopolistic attitude towards uh, business enterprises. They should allow the free market to operate as it should operate. And currently, clearly, Mozambique is being used as a scapegoat. And I, for one, was not going to buy that kind of story, because we all know, even yourself who's asking me that question, Jonah, you all know that the problem is not, Mozambique only came yesterday. These problems have not started yesterday. Why would you want to restrict everything to Mozambique? Please.
Well, first of all, Mozambique doesn't come into the picture. It is not getting the attribute. It is Zimbabwe that is having the issue. In August last year, 2024, Zimbabwe introduced a transit levy. And shortly after that, Zambia started experiencing a fuel shortage because there's 2,500 trucks, transporters, that were taken off the market because of this decision. Isn't this quite consistent that in August, Zimbabwe introduces this levy and in September, Zambia begins to experience this fuel shortage? Isn't this clear and quite consistent and makes sense?
No, I don't think so. I think my position also uh, is the one which is actually very firm, because we want government to stop favoring certain entrepreneurs. And for as long as government will continue favoring certain entrepreneurs over others, our inescapable duty as leaders of the country is to call them out. And when we call them out and they begin fishing for reasons like they're doing, we'll not accept it. We want to see a level playing field being promoted, especially in the energy mix. We don't want Zambia to be suffering as a result of selfish politicians working with certain private players to promote their interests. It's high time they began promoting the interests of the local Zambians. We can't be queuing for fuel 6 days after independence when we've got so many players who want to participate in the market. We can't do that. It's unacceptable.
In 2023, President Hakainde Hichilema directed his newly appointed permanent secretary to deal with the 30-day price review of petroleum products that we've seen and can agree has been quite detrimental to planning for businesses, planning for individuals as well. This has not been actualized, as we have been able to see. How can we address this 30-day price review, keeping in mind that according to government, they say that the reason why this price review is taking long is because petroleum market is now in the private sector and there's no oil marketing company that will wait 90 days before they can recover their costs in business?
Recapitalizing them. Just recapitalizing them, because India has got the capacity to store our fuel. Then you are going to get out of that problem. Because even in a village, Jonah, there's what they call Butala, where they don't have fridges. They have Butala where they keep groundnuts. For a rainy day, they're going to get some groundnuts from there. No country in the world will stay without having fuel supplies being stored, because Zambia, as a country, 6 days after independence, we should be staying even for at least a minimum of 3 months without having these shocks. It's important that we invest in that, because it's the only way. And as I said earlier, Jonah, all that government needed was to procure a hydrocarbon cracker to make Indian viable. They have not done that. They have chosen to be doing what they're doing, which is not tenable. And I agree with you that for as long as the ERB does not look at that issue from that perspective, they are going to be having press meetings every 30th or 31st of the month to announce new price markets. I think that's not the way it should be, because it is bringing instability on the market. Consider it. Government must be proactive. That's why I keep on saying they must be proactive. Let Indeni refinery be brought up to speed. I think it's suffering. And when you pass on those costs on to them, their salaries are not increasing every day. That's what the challenge is. So if the salaries are not increasing every day, you are passing on those costs on to them, it is suffocating them. They are failing to meet the basic needs. And so this is something that the government must take very seriously and look at it in earnest.
You're watching this edition of This Day, and my guest tonight is Citizens First President Harry Kalaba. After the break, we talk about food insecurity in the country and how the Citizens First assess the situation. Welcome back. You're watching This Day. My guest is Harry Kalaba, president of the Citizens First political party. Tonight, we're talking about the state of the economy, the state of the energy sector, but now we weigh in on food security in Zambia. You say that the country has a crisis of food insecurity, but last year in September, the Food Reserve Agency confirmed that we have enough maize stock in the reserves to last beyond the next farming season. Why do you feel otherwise?
You know, I would say, I mean, where are those, where is that same food which they're saying they have in stock? Why are we importing then maize from Uganda? Why are we importing maize from Kenya? Why are we importing maize from all over the world? Why are we doing that if we've got enough in stock? I think earlier on, Jonah, I touched on that trajectory. I had said they told us that they had enough stock in FRA. The Minister of Agriculture went to Parliament and said he had enough stocks. He returned 3 months later and said we're importing from Uganda, we're importing from everywhere else. If you have enough food, even at a domestic level, Jonah, if you have enough food in the house, would you go and start buying some more before you finish, before you deplete what you have in your fridge? Doesn't work that way. I think it is simple logic. The moment they began importing, anybody serious would know that we don't have in the shades of FRA. Why would you import and allow your own maize to rot in the shades of FRA when you have not depleted what you have? Clearly, it is telling you the government is even failing to be honest with its own citizens about the status quo of some of these very important issues in our country. I think they shouldn't take and trivialize matters of such great importance to the levels that are trivializing them to. It is wrong. It is not right.
Well, this picture that I've just painted is from September last year, which is one of the latest reports that has been given by the Food Reserve Agency, while you make reference to scenarios earlier than that. Don't you want to adjust your opinion to latest data?
No, but how can I adjust my opinion when I know that what they're talking about as food security is because it's coming out of importation? The carelessness with which they have handled this matter is very annoying, Jonah. It's very, very annoying. They were asked, the president himself said, we'll run agriculture like a business. They went and sold. Now, after you spend our monies, which we don't have, to bring in the maize, you bring it in the country, and then now you want to say we are food secure. That's not the way you get food secure. You get food secure by producing your own and not selling what your friends produced. I don't think that is right. They must begin taking strategic food reserves extremely seriously because that is where our lives hinge. Government can't be careless with things like that, and they should learn to tell the truth when it comes to strategic food reserves. It is hinging on the lives of our people, and we must be honest enough to tell our people exactly the position as to where we are. We don't want to see conflicting statements. Today, State House says this. Tomorrow, Vice President says that. The other day, the Minister says that. It just can't be like that. We need to have a common position as to where we are today. What guarantee do you have that the statement which the Minister of Agriculture gave in September is not going to conflict in the very near future with maybe the Vice President when she's answering the question times in answering question session in Parliament? What guarantee do we have? Because these are people that have shown you clearly that they're experts in flip-flopping. What they give you today cannot even be relied upon. And that is the challenge that we have with this government. They must learn to issue statements that citizens can cling on. They must learn to issue statements that are factual and that will not be contradictory in the near future. So it is difficult to believe them and understand exactly where they stand as regards food security. All I know myself, as things stand right now, is that we've been importing when we should not have been importing maize. Shame.
You spoke to the unemployment levels as well at your press briefing in the country, as well as the government's recruitment exercises being exclusive to specific names. These are some of the allegations that you made. And I'd like to know exactly what you mean by this.
Look, we had a leader that came in government in 2021 coming from the private sector. And all of us, our hope was that since he's coming from the private sector, he's going to create a lot of jobs within the private sector. Nothing has been created in that regard. Nothing. They go and employ 3-4 nurses in the following government structures, and they say we have created jobs. That's not the way you create jobs. You create jobs by having a deliberate policy, by ensuring that you begin value addition to your raw materials within your own country. You create jobs by ensuring that the mining sector, many Zambians are front-loaded in there. You create jobs by ensuring that you don't ship jobs outside your own country. By taking your raw materials out without value addition, you don't create the jobs. But what we have done ourselves is that we have failed to create jobs by giving incentives to the locals, give incentives to the farmers who are producing milk in our country. Why in God's name, Jonah? Why in God's name should we, 60 years after independence, be importing importing milk from Uganda? Why should we be doing that? Because Zambia has got enough dairy farmers who should be giving us that milk. By us importing milk from Uganda, by us importing milk from Zimbabwe, what we are basically doing is that we're creating jobs for the people in Kampala, we are creating jobs for our colleagues in Harare, and our own people here will not have those jobs. Why can't we begin creating incentives around our manufacturing companies? Why can't we begin creating incentives around our marketeers, incentives around all these people who are in the informal sector, so that at the end of the day, when all is said and done, the people using those incentives will also begin employing other people in their own specific spheres where they're operating from. But that is not happening because they are constricted. What we have seen is that this government is giving more incentives, as I said earlier, Jonah, to the people in the mining sector. Our guys who are coming from, our friends who are coming from outside Zambia, running our mines in Lumwana, in Kalumbila and Kansanshi, Mopana, and so on and so forth. Those are the ones enjoying the incentives that government is giving them. But what we want to see is that our youths who are graduating from the university, our youths who are graduating from colleges, what plans have we put in place for them to be absorbed in the market? We just can't be relying on the civil service. How have we helped private media houses like yourselves, Diamond TV, so that if you have incentives surrounding yourselves, you are able to employ more journalists because you'll have expanded? Congratulations to you. You have done a lot of expansion programs on your own. Keep it up. But it should not only be about yourselves, it should be about generally, all other sectors in the economy. But what we see in this country is that we are failing to have companies grow because, first of all, they don't have electricity to use for them to grow their businesses. And secondly, the money is when they go to borrow from the banks, they're also prohibitive, the interest rates. Apart from the interest rates, just the environment itself, it is so suffocating. The environment isn't conducive for any business to thrive as it should thrive because we have a situation where our government is focusing more on giving incentives to outsiders as opposed to our people who are within here who create jobs, opportunities for our youths to begin getting engaged in.
We've got a United Nations Human Rights Council rapporteur who's in the country to observe the human rights situation for until the 31st of January. I would like you to tell us your assessment of the human rights situation in the country and what you would say to the UN rapporteur.
I think, Jonah, the issue of political intimidation has grown in our country. We would want to see a level playing field where politicians are not arrested arbitrarily for issuing statements that should not really attract charges like sedition. We would want to see a situation where people in this country, not only politicians, but people in this country's movements, freedom of speech, these things must be respected. I'm an example here where you see me, Jonah, where because I'm speaking the truth and I'm telling government the truth, which truth they don't want to hear. What do? I left government way back in 2017. They come back to me 7 years later and begin asking me about a few properties that they said, how did you build these properties? I left government 7 years ago, eh? But because they think that they should not be challenged, they should silence everybody else. They go put seizure notices, put restriction notices on the properties. The law says after 9 months, after 6 months, those restrictions should fall off, or they can extend up to 9 months. It's now 2 years. My properties still remain restricted by government, contrary to the provisions of the law. Now, if that is not an infringement on people's rights, what is it? And the only reason why they have come or they did that to me was because they did not like me telling them the truth. They wanted me to be a praise singer, to be telling them what they want to hear. Yet my duty is to speak for the voiceless Zambians. And that's what I'm doing. Now, in the quest of us doing what is expected of us to do, our rights are being infringed upon. I think that is not correct. It is high time that the human rights again took, the rapporteur was here, who is here, should take time. As I said, even during the press briefing, they should also go and see the conditions of living in which our colleagues Chitotela, Chilangwa, Bowman, GBM, and many other citizens anyway, are being subjected to living in our prisons. Some people, like I said, like GBM, for instance, who has not been. I think he deserves the right to go and be seen by his doctor. That is not happening. I think for me, it's things like that that don't just sit right. Why should Zambia cascade down into a dictatorship like we are seeing now? Why should we stop talking because somebody's ego will be deflated? That is not our problem. Our problem is that our rights are being infringed upon. We are being arrested, Jonah, for speaking the truth. Why should it be so? Why? Why should we be intimidated by this government just because we are pointing out the lies that they came with from the opposition? They want everybody to be clapping for them even when they have done nothing. I and my team in the Citizens First are not available to begin clapping for people that have failed. It's not happening.
While you say that, the Human Rights Commission argues that politically exposed persons have in fact had it easier in Zambia, in the sense that you as politically exposed persons, when facing the law, get out quickly, you get justice much quicker than the ordinary citizen because of the activism, and they're blaming us, the media, and yourselves for the noise that we make when a politically exposed person is arrested. But why should they get better treatment than the ordinary citizen whom you don't speak for as political leaders?
Jonah, be fair with me at least for once. Just a while ago, I was talking about the ordinary citizens in the prisons. Even at the press briefing, I said, when we talk about human rights, they're not just limited to people that are known. We're talking about people that have stayed in Chimbokaela, people that have stayed in Mwembeshi prisons for a very long time without facing trial, without being taken to court. We are talking about citizens like Gen Z and others that have been detained before, longer than the stipulated time of 48 hours. We are talking about ordinary citizens. But I don't know why it can be said that I'm not talking about the politicians. No, we're talking about everybody. But even politicians themselves, they are human beings that need to be treated fairly so. And worse still for them, because they're trying to remove an inept leader or an inept leadership from power during next year's elections. The way they are being treated is so harsh as compared to ordinary citizens who don't have the interest of removing them from power for being inept. So the way government reacts to us is different as compared to ordinary citizens who are not critical of their failures. Now, that should not be taken to mean that we are only talking of our colleagues, the politicians. It's every Zambian. Everybody has the right to freedom of association, the freedom of worship, and all these freedoms we are all condemned to must be enjoyed without let or hindrance, without government taking advantage of their prestigious positions of being in government to trample upon our rights. And clearly, Jonah, even you, Jonah, you know that in this country, our rights are being trampled upon every day. You know that. Why can't we get rallies? Why can't we have, ever since they came into government, these people, ever since they came into government, the only time that they have allowed people to have a rally is when the citizens first applied in Kitwe, and the second time was in Samfia. The third time we applied to have a rally in Chinsali, another rally in Mandev. They refused. They said you can't be having rallies every time. But who tells them that it is up to them to tell us when we can have rallies and when we should not have rallies? It's not up to them. When we are mobilizing our parties, they should give us space, just like they were being given space to mobilize themselves. If the UPND were being treated the way they are treating us now, it would have been very difficult for them to form government. But they were given space. And even social media, which they used heavily themselves to catapult them into government, they have now gone into the social media space and made sure that they follow they follow a law they condemned, that they were going to do away with it. That's the one that now they're trying even to stiffen. What type of hypocrisy is this?
Well, finally, Transparency International Zambia has accused the United Party for National Development of vote buying in the Kawambwa by-election. And I'm curious to find out where this places our democracy.
It's very sad. Our democracy is under attack, clearly. And this government, especially the executive, has wanted to control the legislature as well as the judiciary. You can see their fingerprints all over the place. The violence which they condemned when they were in opposition is being perpetrated by themselves. They hired thugs. Even now, as you and I are speaking, they have imported people from Lusaka into Petauke. Even now, as we are speaking, they have imported people who should not be in an area. All this is being done because by UPND Koela with violence. They are used. These ones can never be washed away from violence. That is who they are. It's part of their definition. But they promised the people of Zambia that they are going to be different. Why should they continue using violence as a tool to intimidate voters? Why should they continue using violence and underhand methods as a tool to continue to win elections? Then they come out and say, we have won elections, we are popular. The UPND is not popular. Zambians are tired of the UPND, and Zambians are ready to kick the UPND out in 2026 because of their lies and their ineptitude to deliver development. They have failed to deliver development. They have failed to harmonize our nation. They have failed. That's why, how can you explain it, Jonah, that they are almost going into 4 years of government? 4 years. Nothing tangible that they have done in terms of development. How do you explain that? It's all talk, no work.
Harry Kalaba, President of the Citizens First Political Party, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of This Day.
Thank you, Jonah, for having me. I'm glad that you had me, and thank you so much. I'm grateful.